Welcome to Syntax. Today we got an episode on building MCP servers. We talked about MCP, I don't know, maybe a couple months ago, and so much has changed since that episode that I thought we need to do a brand new episode on it, explaining what it is, explaining all the updates to it, and kind of diving into all of the different pieces and tools and helpful things around it. MCP is the Model Context Protocol. It's for exposing tools to AI. We'll talk a little bit more about that, but it's going to be a great episode. You're certainly not going to want to miss this one. What's up, Scott?
Oh, hey man, I'm sick. All this stuff.
Oh.
There's been somebody jackhammering. I'm gonna say this. Somebody's jackhammering a patio for like 2 straight days now, and this is finally the first little window where there's been some silence. I mean, they were jackhammering at like 6 p.m. We were gonna eat outside, and it was still going on. I don't understand how you could spend that much time jackhammering a patio.
That's an unreasonable time to jackhammer. Yeah.
Yeah,
Brutal.
You can't do that. You can't. When people are trying to eat dinner and you're jackhammering. So yeah, not a fan of that. And yeah. So besides that, I've just been like banging my head against some code stuff, and I'm sure the jackhammering has not been like helping my brain function today.
Yeah.
So that's where I'm at. Yeah, one of those days, right?
Well,
yeah.
I'm going to fill you with MCP nuggets, and I feel like you'll be back to your bright self by the end of this.
Love that. Yes.
So, all right, let's get into it. So, MCP, it's a standard for being able to surface tools to AI. So, whether you are using like an IDE editor like VS Code or Cursor, or whether you're using a chat application like Claude Desktop, or whether you are building your own thing with AI libraries like the OpenAI TypeScript library, all of those things have the ability to surface additional tools to it via something called MCP. And I'll give you an example of where I ran into it recently. I built my second MCP server a couple days ago, so I'm feeling fresh on that. And I used a lot of the new features that have come out since we did the first episode on it. So the application that I was building was sort of like this little scratch pad that will do calculations for you. So I find myself often doing things like just like writing notes in a text editor and then having to do quick little math, like this thing costs $100, and then you add on tax and shipping, and then I'll divide it by, there's 2 of them, you divide by 2, or all right, we have to record 6 episodes, and that's this many hours on average. They're between this and this, and I find myself just having to like copy paste that into a calculator or something like that. And I'm like, I want like a natural language UI for doing currency conversion and addition and whatnot. So there's a couple apps out there that do it, but none of them are using AI. And I thought AI is so good at natural language processing. So I built it up and it worked really well, except there were 2 problems. First of all, AI sucks at math. It was just imagining totals up. Like some of them were correct, and then some of them were just like, no, that's not right. That's not right at all. Or I would do things like T-shirt vendor 1 has a $50 setup, and then at 100 T-shirts, it would cost $7 per T-shirt, and at 500 T-shirts, it would cost $5.55. And then vendor number 2, I would go ahead and give all the stats. Which one is the better deal? And it would go ahead and do all the math for me, find the averages, and then it would tell me at 100 and 500 T-shirts which was the better vendor. And it sounds like a math problem from like a textbook. But it was just imagining the actual answers, and I was like, this is kind of frustrating. So what you have to do in these situations where AI doesn't necessarily excel at doing these things is you have to give it tools. Right? And one thing that AI sucks at is math. So I implemented something called tool calling, which is not MCP. I'll talk about the differences later on in the show. And basically you give it access to a tool that can do math. So I exposed it. It's called Math.js library. And then what it does is anytime it needs to do math, it simply just returns the function call that needs to be run. It runs that function, then it passes it back to the AI with the actual answer. So we're actually like evaluating the math not with AI but with a computer. uh, so that worked really well. And then the next step I needed was like I needed like currency conversion, but I needed like real up to date rates. And the AI doesn't necessarily know what the currency rates are. So what I did is I created a MCP server that will expose several tools for getting rates, for converting currency, for getting historical rates. So when the AI realizes it needs to fetch a rate or do some conversions, it can simply use the tools that I have supplied to it via MCP. So here I have this little MCP jam, which is cool. Yes, answer or a question there, student Scott.
What I don't want to do, I don't want to interrupt you. How does the AI know when to use one of these specific tools?
Yes.
Are you having to pass specific keywords, or is context enough?
Yeah, so when you are loading a tool, when you're defining a tool, you give it a description. Actually, hilariously enough, you just asked me that question and I went to show you my description. I don't even have descriptions for the 4 tools, but if you go into like the Sentry MCP and load all of their tools, you can see here that there's like a find teams tool here, and it says finds teams in an organization Sentry. Use this tool when you need to view all teams in a Sentry organization, find the team's slug to aid in other tool requests. So that both the name of it obviously was enough for me, as well as the description will be made available to the AI, and then the AI will be able to decide when it wants to use a specific tool and wants to run it.
Okay. I've always found that it will be a little bit interesting with MCP. Maybe it's gotten easier to always get the right call. I know this is calling tools.
Yeah, because I think what can happen is when you have too many tools, you just like load it up and give it a bazillion, it won't necessarily know which one to run.
Too many tools.
Yes.
Syntax.fm team.
Too many tools, yes. So that was the MCP server that I made, and I obviously have a couple other MCP servers here. We got the Cloudflare Worker MCP server. What this will do is you authenticate, which is a new part of the MCP spec that we did not cover last time. So the ability to use OAuth flows inside of an MCP server is now possible, meaning that you can hook it up to your Cloudflare or your Sentry or whatever, and then when you try to use that tool, you have to first do that whole, do you want to allow this application? And you click yes, and then it will then connect it to the thing that you have. So authentication is something that is relatively new, as well as the transport protocols. So there's 2 ways that MCP currently works. The first one is via standard IO, meaning that the MCP server is going to be running locally on your machine or on the same machine that the AI process is running. So if you have like a node script or something that's handling incoming requests, you might also have a MCP server running that will be able to input and output data. So that's standard IO. And then the other way that MCP works is via HTTP and server sent events, which is more probably what people listening to this podcast are going to want to use, because we're web developers, right? You want to be able to fire up a server, you want to have URL endpoints, and then people can connect to it. So that's generally how I'm connecting to all of these. You'll see I have this one, currency-mcp.westboss.com. When it connects to that, you can list all of the different tools that are available, as well as, there we go, they're listed, as well as some of the other things like resources and prompts I'll talk about in just a second. So HTTP MCP servers will either return one of 2 things. First of all, you send a post request to it, and then what is returned is either going to be just a JSON payload, like give me a list of all of your tools, or let me go ahead and use one of these tools. So for example, get latest rates, go ahead and run that tool. It's going to give me a list of all the rates, but you can also change like the base currency, go ahead and rerun that, and it will give me the Canadian rates. So that will either return just JSON back, or it will give you a stream which uses server sent events. So it will either return immediately or a stream that then can send data as it's made available over server sent events. Server sent events are kind of an interesting one because it requires your server to be long running. You know what's not very good at being long running computers? Serverless.
Yes, correct. Functions.
Turns out we kind of need servers. Yeah. So the solution to that is Cloudflare uses durable objects. Vercel uses fluid compute. Basically, anyone who is offering hosting of MCP servers will either be running it on like a long-term storage, or they'll have some sort of other way to get around that via durable objects or fluid compute. This tool that I'm using, or if you want to be able to explore an MCP, you can use what's called the MCP inspector. And that will allow you to connect to an MCP server, and you can view all of the things that it has available to you. So tools is probably the most popular one, right? Like here's an example MCP server that will surface a whole bunch of different tools, add, print environmental variables, annotate message. But there's also things like resources, which are allowing you to supply files to an AI, which is really cool. So last time we talked about MCP, I said the server that I built was something that would go off and download an SVG icon and then bring it back to the AI, because that's something that AI sucks at. It sucks at getting icons, like put a Chrome icon here. So I hooked it up to an API that went ahead and downloaded the SVG icon and brought it back. But at the time, not many of these apps supported resources. So there was actually no way to give the AI the actual SVG icon. So what I did is I told it just to like run a cat command and pipe it into an SVG. Now you can properly give it a file or an image or any other type of resource that you would be expecting. So if you say like go off and download 6 sound effects of cats meowing, you could write an MCP server that could do that.
That is something I would like to do. I think if I'm reaching for AI, that's the type of thing typically that I might want to do. I want to have some cats meowing. One time, I used to work at a record label, Ghostly International, for people who might have heard of it. We each used to get, like, there would be a rotation of who got to pick the album that we'd be listening to. And there's like 6 people in the office, and these, mind you, are very into music people. I'm very into music person myself, but these guys were very serious, and it was often like, I'm going to put on this album that is like touching my soul right now. And one time I put on the Beetle Barkers, which was just dogs barking the Beatles, and I think they all wanted to fire me because we listened to the whole thing, and they were so mad about it by the end of because they're like, they were gonna throw me out the window. I swear, but I really liked it.
That's hilarious.
Yeah.
Another part of the MCP spec is the ability to save reusable prompts. And this is really cool because, like, you know how we have like cursor rules, like kind of things that you want to tell the AI over and over again.
Yeah.
It's not the exact same thing, but the idea of a server being able to ship prompts along with other tools is really neat and really useful. So, for example, on Cloudflare Workers, if you load their prompts, you see they have workers prompt full, and you can go ahead and load that sucker. Basically, what they're going to return is this is a massive prompt for working with Cloudflare Workers, right? It just says like, use TypeScript unless explicitly told to use JavaScript. Always add appropriate types and interfaces. Use ES modules. So like that's kind of like cursor code guidelines. But then they also have output formats, bunch of integrations, and then all kinds of different code examples that you could possibly have, right? That's a massive prompt that's going to help your your AI agent that's generating code to generate code that is much more in line with it. So they provide those prompts because if you were to tell the AI agent, hey, create a Cloudflare worker that does X, Y, and Z, chances are it's going to go ahead and grab the prompt for that Cloudflare worker because it now knows I'm building that, download it, and then put that as part of the prompt before it goes off. So this, like MCP Jam, MCP Inspector, these are tools that are just for exploring it. This is not actually something that you would be using it directly. Like I said earlier, the way that it generally would work is you would add these MCPs to your chat application. You would add it to your cursor, your VS Code IDE, anything that interacts with IDE. In my case, I was using the OpenAI TypeScript SDK. And in order to surface this currency conversion, you simply just add it as an MCP. And then when the AI goes off and runs it, it says, oh, that's neat. I have access to these tools, right? And if you're using ChatGPT, you can tell that sometimes it just searches the web, right? That's a tool that they have integrated into it. So it knows it can go ahead and do these things. Actually coding these tools, let's talk about that now, what that actually looks like. The way that it works is you can fire up a MCP server. This one, in my case, is using the MCP server from Anthropic. They're the makers of the spec. And then in order to actually make it hostable and long running, I'm using the Cloudflare agents MCP that just extends that. But most of this code is going to be standard MCP spec. And then you simply just, when it fires up, you can add resources or prompts. In my case, I'm just adding tools. So convert currency or get latest rates. And then you give it a schema. Now, the schema is really important because it does several things, right? It tells the AI how to give it the information, right? Because the AI has to know how to structure the input. It does the validation of the data coming in. So in my case, I am using Zod. So generate latest race schema, right? You can take the base, which is a currency code. You can go ahead and describe it. And then you can give it different symbols. Maybe if we take a look at the convert currency, there is a from Canadian to USD and amount. And in order to specify that schema, I've done it all out in Zod. You can use any one that you want, but you must validate that the data coming in from the AI is of the format that you expect it before you go ahead and pass it through. And then you can also specify the output types. This is something that I have created, but I'm not using it yet because I have not yet found anything that can use these things. So the output schema is just a new part of the spec, which I have not found to be implemented anywhere yet.
And if you want to see all of the errors in your application, you'll want to check out Sentry at sentry.io/syntax. You don't want a production application out there that, well, you have no visibility into in case something is blowing up and you might not even know it. So head on over to sentry.io/syntax. Again, we've been using this tool for a long time and it totally rules. All right. So your calling tools, which we said at one point isn't MCP, is tool calling and MCP related, similar, the same? What's the lingo there?
It's kind of a confusing thing. So before we had MCP, we had this idea that like the OpenAI docs, you can have function calling is what they called it. And then we have MCP, which kind of seems like the same thing, but also isn't. So the difference between the two, as far as I understand it, there's a lot of overlap between them. The tool calling is something that's going to happen on the same server that your AI code is running. So for a very simple example is I gave it a math tool calling, so it's able to do things like add and subtract and average and max the different numbers. and it will be able to run those. Whereas the MCP server, it can live somewhere else. The MCP server can live on the same machine as well, but it can live absolutely somewhere else. And also it seems to be a little bit more stateful. There's authentication, there is long-lived sessions that are streaming data back and forth. There is lots of back and forth with the actual server. So once you're logged in, then you can say, what are my things? So I feel like the tool calling is for very simple functions that need to get run, whereas the MCP server is going to be for, in my example, I'm connecting to the Cloudflare workers ones to get docs and be able to create databases. I'm connecting to my Sentry MCP to be able to get a list of my issues or to kick off their AI agent to actually fix the things for you. I've got my currency one, which is going off and fetching the currency rates and able to calculate them for me. So I feel like they have quite a bit of overlap, but the MCP can be remote, and the MCP is a standard specification. So I would, unless it's just a very simple function that I'm running, I would probably throw that off to a separate MCP server. One more thing. I've been talking about remote MCP servers, and
Yes.
that's a relatively new thing to the spec, meaning that previously your MCP server had to be running locally on the same machine that your actual AI code is running. And that's really helpful for something like Puppeteer, right?
Yes.
There's a Puppeteer MCP server that has the ability to fire up a browser, navigate through the page, take screenshots, count, see if something's on the page. Like anything that you could normally do, you can sort of robot via an MCP server, where you're basically, when you fire it up, you're saying, hey, here is, I think the Puppeteer MCP server has about 40 or 45 tools. And you say, these are 45 things you can do in a browser. Go nuts. You can do any of them. You can control the entire browser, right? Like that makes a lot of sense. You run that in a Docker container. It runs on the same machine that you have. But then other things like the Sentry one, the Cloudflare Workers one, that makes more sense to log in and be able to communicate back and forth because they have all the information, right?
Yeah, in fact, that's primarily how I've often used them. Now, I have used like the Sentry one, but the MCP server I've been using the most lately is the Godot one. And there's like, I will tell you folks, if you're out there looking for good MCP servers, it's really the wild west with a lot of them right now. There's like 6 or 7 different Godot MCP servers, and I would say 1 or 2 good ones. And even though 1 or 2 good ones vary pretty widely in terms of what they're able to do. So.
And how are you interfacing with that server?
Via Cursor currently.
Okay.
Because what I'm doing is I'm working on a game, and Godot has its own interface. It also has an API, and the Godot MCP server allows it so that I don't have to work inside of Godot, but I can control the Godot interface via Cursor if I want to automate certain things, create resources, update things through the UI, those types of things.
Yeah. That's great. I even think about like OBS, which we use quite a bit. OBS has a WebSocket API to do literally anything, and I built an app that allows us to start and turn off recordings and record screens and do a whole bunch of like neat stuff. But I often think like, wouldn't that be nice if it was just a MCP server, because then you can you could just type to what you want, or like a lot of the times I look at something like the Cloudflare Workers one, where let's take a look at the tools here.
OBS, I would like you to have these settings, the settings that are the best from YouTube. Give me the YouTube settings.
Here we go. Find issues in the Syntax FM org on the Sentry MCP, and then it just fires them all out. But like I often think, like it could probably do like generative UI. Like if you just give it a list of all the possible things that you can do, it could probably do a pretty good job at just building out a UI for you. And I built a whole UI for the OBS one. And I like, don't you think it could do it? If you were to have an MCP server of these are all the possible things you can do,
Yeah.
it could probably generate a pretty neat on-demand UI.
Yeah.
For
yeah.
you.
Especially because OBS is one of those things that sucks to work in.
I don't know if it would make a better UI than what it is. I don't think the AI will know better.
No,
than
I'm just saying,
UI
like,
designers. But
you would have to interface with it less.
anyways, what I was saying about the remote MCP servers is that not all clients support them just yet because it is a relatively new. This whole MCP thing is moving at like a breakneck speed right now, and I imagine that this episode in 3 months will be relatively out of date, and we'll have to do another one. But if you are using a client that doesn't support remote MCP servers yet, which is most of them, then what you'll have to do is you'll have to use this little npx MCP remote, and what that does is it just fires up a little proxy server on your machine, and it will sort of translate them from one to another. It's a pretty common thing. Anytime like you see any documentation for integrating them, you'll have to be using this MCP remote.
I was going to say most of the documentation for remote ones is going to include that anyways for common providers.
Let's just rattle through a couple really handy ones as well. Obviously, I've been talking about the Cloudflare ones. Look at how many they have, though.
Yeah.
They have one for their docs, one for workers, one for worker builds. That's kind of, worker builds would be kind of cool because you could just chat, hey, why did my build fail?
Can you explain to me why you would need one for the docs?
Yeah, documentation is so key because...
Yeah, but like why would you need an MCP server for the docs themselves?
Basically, you're working on something, right? You're working on Cloudflare workers, you're working on Svelte, you're working on whatever, and you need to be able to give the AI the specific docs. If the AI knows, oh, I'm going to go grab the documentation for this specific library, it can go ahead, it'll just simply fetch it, and then it can go through it and pull the parts out that it needs and understand how it works. And that's huge. So you basically just have to throw an MCP server for the docs of what you're working on, and then like the Cloudflare and Vercel both do an awesome job where they have all of their documentation as Markdown, and that's a great thing just to feed directly into an AI. But it's one step further where you don't even have to go copy paste it. You can simply just give it the tools like, hey, check the docs for X, Y, and Z, or hey, if it doesn't understand how something works, because so many of these things that are not like AI is really good at writing Next.js and Tailwind, but there's a lot of other stuff that doesn't have a lot of examples out there that it's not very good at writing. And it's hard when things change, like Svelte 5. It doesn't know about Svelte 5 just yet, right? Because the models haven't been trained on it. But if you can prompt it with a whole bunch of examples and TypeScript types and how these things work, then it's going to do a much better job at how that works. There's this use MCP, which is a React hook, which is wild to me because you basically just take any MCP server, feed it into this React hook, and it will give you all of the methods and state for using it inside of a React application, which is really cool. Which a lot of this feels like we're just recreating REST APIs.
Yeah, right. Yeah, of course. Yeah, that is the weird thing.
With the currency one, I felt like I was just hot potatoing a lot of the requests from one to another. David Kramer had a really good tweet thread on it. Kelsey Dawes also replied. He had a blog post on it. He says, like, the MCP is not really your API. The MCP is more of a UI, which I thought was kind of an interesting way.
It's a connecting thread.
Yeah, exactly. Instead of interfacing with your service or your API via buttons, you're interfacing the service via MCP, right? Or it's generally going to be something like chat. The AI is going to be doing that. So in some cases, those will be the same thing. You want your entire API to be available to the AI. But in other cases, like if you think about your UI, sometimes your UI will have 2 or 3 different API requests or REST requests, and then you'll need to do things in a specific order,
Yeah.
and surfacing it via MCP request is more the move there. So that's all we got on the MCP right now. There's this really great GitHub here called Awesome MCP Servers. You can kind of rip through. It really feels like the early days of APIs. In
Yeah.
the early days, everybody had an API and everybody was building stuff and remixing and connecting things together, and it was really good. And over time, a lot of those APIs disappeared, partially because people don't want you building your own version of Twitter or whatever social network. They want you, or Reddit or whatever. And partially because like people use them to spam, and you can't give people programmatic tools for pushing things. However, it does feel like everybody's coming out swinging with their own MCP server right now, and it's kind of an exciting time to see everybody. Like, there's a Telegram one and a welcome bot. Like, do we need a syntax MCP server? What would that do?
What would that do? What would that do?
You could get the latest show. You could search for specific. Like, again, we're just describing
it's just an
a
API.
REST API here.
You're just giving it a different means of interfacing with it.
Yeah, I think the real power of a lot of these APIs is both when you can pull content, but also when you can do things, right? Like when you can start stuff or save things or modify.
Yeah, especially
And
things that
that's where it
have
gets
like
really exciting.
a UI, because it gets you out of doing click ops for things.
Yeah.
But also, I mean, you're getting into AI ops. But like, yeah, if you're clicking around a UI to trigger things and now you have a tool to interact with that via natural language, that seems interesting to me. Or you're able to connect several tools together, to work with each other. Yeah. Those seem like the biggest bonuses for me.
Yeah, and probably the one other one I'd add to that is being able to get better results out of your AI application. Because at the end of the day, the whole reason I stumbled into all of this is because I simply just needed better math and better currency conversion in the app that I was building. And so this was not like a chat app that I was using directly. It's just the app that I was building was not very good. And in order to make it better, you have to give the AI more tools.
Well, that's great. Maybe we could have a MCP server for some sick pics where it could just send you right to wherever we bought these things from. Sick pics are the things that we are enjoying. Could be anything, a podcast, could be just about any product type of thing or whatever. Yeah, sick pics. You know what? I will sick pic. This is like not really a unique sick pick in any regard, but man, the new Mario Kart on Nintendo Switch 2 is just a lot of fun. I've only been playing with the kids, and we'll find some time to rip around that thing. And when they announced like giving like modes where it was like give like steering assistance and stuff like that, I didn't really understand it. But like now that I'm playing with a 6-year-old, man, the steering assistance stuff really helps them have a good time, because even in the beginner settings, like, yeah, they're learning how to play the game and they're doing pretty decent, but they're finishing in the bottom half of the standings every time, and they have a lot less fun doing that. And then when you turn on the steering assist, they're finishing in second place and fourth place, and that just makes them like want to get better at the game and not get discouraged. So I've been really enjoying the game. I'm historically someone that plays Mario Kart games by picking the most obnoxious characters. Like who are the biggest, most annoying characters in the game? And let me tell you, this game has got some obnoxious characters. So I'll be the cow, I'll be Chargin' Chuck, I'll be just like the goofiest characters, because that's how I like to play. So yeah, the new Mario Kart is just lovely, as you'd expect it to be.
That's good. I downloaded or purchased Mario Kart for the Wii, and
That's
I
so
didn't realize that there's like a hacked version of Mario Kart called Mario Kart Black, and like literally somebody like went and replaced all the music, all of the like infographics, even like the loading screen.
oh, creepy pasta. Yeah,
Um,
wow.
and I just like was like, "Hey kids, let's play Mario Kart," and I was like, "This is dark."
This is
I
what you
can't believe.
downloaded? Oh man, that's so funny.
But apparently somebody just like literally modded the entire image for Mario Kart
Yeah, I'm looking at it
and
right now.
Mario Kart Black. Yeah, it's
There's like a
it's dark.
scandalous pixelated Princess Peach on the back cover of this
Yeah.
thing. This is what you loaded up. My gosh.
But that just goes to show how like not dialed I am on video games. I was like Mario
Yeah.
Kart Black. That sounds like the best one.
That sounds
Definitely
like the
getting
best
that.
one for sure.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, man. Modding a Wii is the move if you don't have a Nintendo Switch, because
It was
we got a
maybe
lot
the
of games.
I modded my Nintendo Wii when I was in college, maybe. So
It's still a good thing to do. It's great. Our kids love it. They don't know any better. That's the
uh,
most hilarious thing. They don't
yeah,
realize that it
that's
can get any
honestly
better.
probably for the best.
I'm gonna sick pick a kid's smartwatch. So my daughter, I don't know, probably about 6 months ago, and my son just got one for his birthday. They got the Any Loop kids smartwatch,
Cool.
and it's like the right amount of smartwatch. It's the battery lasts like 5 or 6 days, which is awesome. Like it lasts like it's not every day they're charging it. It does like step counting, which they love every day. How many steps you got? You know, they're trying to compete with us. And it's also interesting as a parent to see how many steps they have. It does heart rate. It does weather if they're close enough to their iPad. It's just Bluetooth. There's no data on it or anything like that. No Wi-Fi. But it's really cool. And I just loved having a watch as a kid. And now they have a watch which has a couple of neat features. They're setting timers on it and everything, and it's like something like 30-35 bucks. When we first got it, I was like, this thing's probably gonna suck, like how good can a
Yeah.
$35 smartwatch be? But it's awesome. I'm very impressed at how good it is for a kid's watch. It's waterproof, it works great. So it's from Any Loop.
Cool. Sick.
Yeah.
Love that.
All right, that's it for today. Thank you so much for tuning in. We will catch you later. Peace.